Hello? That's good.
Never again. Never again.
Meeting today, and the guy that was hosting the meeting, the host, he put in the chat that he had a AI program running in the background that was taking notes for the meeting, basically just transcribing it with all the presentations and stuff included, and then they just mail that link off when they're done, and it's the whole thing.
Spelling on AI is notoriously bad. Put 6 fingers on people. This would be okay if you're Mariano Rivera.
All right, I'm going to start the recording.
This conference will now be recorded.
You all see the agenda? Mm-hmm. You are ready.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'd like to call to order the City of Escalon Planning Commission meeting of February 13th, 2024. Everybody join me in a Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Commission Chair Mark Sarkozy.
Here.
Commission Vice Chair Steve Castellanos has excused absence. Commissioner Barbara Willis.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Dunbar.
Here.
Commissioner Ronnie Van Dyke.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Note, all cell phones, pagers, similar devices need to be set on silent or vibrate mode or turned off unless you are an on-duty emergency responder. First up is the consent calendar to approve the minutes from the meeting of January 9th, 2024. Any comments from the commissioners up here?
I didn't see anything that needed correcting or questioning. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the January 9th meeting.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Let's see, and then we've got our, we open it up to the public hearing if no one's here? Okay.
It's not a public hearing now.
Okay, then we will skip to administrative matters. Item number 2, which is consider and make a recommendation on the 5th cycle 2023 Housing Element Annual Progress Draft Report.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. So annually, the city should and does prepare a housing element annual report. It shows HCD, which is the state body responsible for reviewing housing elements and generally monitoring housing elements, how we have done against our housing element document. The cities should have their governing body, the city council in this case, approve the document before it is sent off to HCD. It needs to be at HCD by April 1st. But we, since you are a advisory body to the city council on matters involving development and land use and all that, we wanted to bring this document before you. It's a relatively straightforward document, a couple of charts kind of share our progress on the housing element. So that is really all there is in terms of a presentation. Happy to answer any questions you may have. No questions is fine too.
Actually, I have some. Since this is the first time I've reviewed such a document, of course, it's part of the housing element, I suppose, in that it's keeping track of that sort of thing, how we're doing against it. Are these figures intended to be a point of departure for future action, or are they intended just as a status report with no discussion about how we're doing compared to how we're supposed to be doing? I mean, if that's the case, 37 units, 2 detached, 35 still essentially TK. Just trying to get a grasp on how we're doing and if this report reflects that in any way. Or are there other things that are not in this report that should be reflective of how we're doing?
Okay. I think there's maybe your question could be taken two different ways. Are you talking about this item that is being brought before the Planning Commission, or are you talking about the report in general?
Well, this report with the charts and everything, the thing I noted about it is that a great many of the charts are blank, which is fine. I mean, they would be blank unless there's something happening. So obviously there's not much happening. And that, I guess, is what I'm getting toward. How are we doing? Are we not doing as well as we should be as a city in helping, in incentivizing housing development? Because that's what this is all about. Or are we doing just fine, and this is how we like it, and et cetera, et cetera? I mean, I'm just trying to get a grasp on what I'm supposed to draw from this report.
Sure. So the report itself is a templated spreadsheet that is provided to us by HCD.
Right.
California is a very big state with a number of counties and a number of cities. Some are very small, like the city of Escalon, and some are very big, like the city of LA. And so there will be different things that different cities do over time, in terms of housing. So all spreadsheets are there for every city to either complete or not complete. So I wouldn't necessarily say that blank spreadsheets means there's nothing happening here. It's just there are different things that the state is looking for. And frankly, they are becoming more nuanced. Now, in terms of, how are we doing against the housing element? I mean, I think that is a subjective call by those who live here, maybe less subjective by HCD, right? But we are showing what the state wants us to show at this point. What progress, I don't want to say progress, but what has happened against the housing element. So the numbers, we have a little less control of. Cities do not develop, right? Developers develop. We can't make a developer develop. We can incentivize, we can make available land, we can, reduce red tape and bureaucracy and those types of things to encourage development, but we don't develop. So what we have pulled up here is the programs and sort of how we are doing against those. That'll be your true measure of, are we following it or are we not following it? So you'll see programs 1 through, well, I think there's maybe 2 pages, 1 through 6, I want to say. And each one, kind of what we have done and frankly, what we have not done yet. And so that's, we have said in this document that there are different programs, there are different policies, objectives, and this is what we've done against those.
Well, that's pretty much what I expected. I'm just trying to, like I said, I'm just trying to grasp what I should draw from this. If if we need to be talking about different elements of this to spur either further discussion or some kind of activity. But you've already answered that. There is one typo I saw, by the way. It's, what was it? Table D, line 2, 3, and column 4.
We had AI spell check it, so I'm surprised.
All right.
Housing on.
Yeah, housing gone. Housing gone.
I see it.
That's it.
Thank you.
No problem. And I had to say that before Barbara pointed it out, because I know she would have. Thank you. I think I understand. I don't want to miss something.
Willis, anything?
No, it's a shame we're so tiny and we don't have more. But then again, it's a good thing that we're tiny.
Like any comments?
No, I noticed a lot of empty spots, but it made sense. Interesting. It's just interesting to me, the information. But yeah, no, I don't have any issue.
Yeah, my only comment would be, and I think now Councilman Stroman mentioned this in a previous housing element, which is that this does seem like a financial burden on the city for what we get out of it. Seems like it's boilerplate for, like you said, for cities across the state, and it doesn't take into account the vast differences of the size of the city. That being said, I don't have any on it, on the report itself.
Yeah, and just to, put a point on that, the annual report is something that staff does. We will now, every 8 years, provide a housing element document. We are going through that process right now with Four Leaf. It's been on the street. It's now in with HCD. So, housing element, which is the 8-year document, and then housing element annual report, which is how we're doing against that 8-year document. This is the annual report staff does in-house. And we will hopefully adopt the housing element for 2023 to 2031 sometime this summer.
Okay. Good, so let's see, so I'll make a motion to recommend the, what are we calling it? To recommend the 5th cycle of the 2023 Housing Element Annual Progress Report draft to the City Council for approval.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 4-0. All right, and then moving on, item number 3, 2024 planning laws.
These are really here, there's no intended staff report. These are really here for your information. We have our legal firm provide us emails with all the new housing laws that are coming forward this year. Housing laws, land use laws, development laws. We have selected ones that we thought may have a little applicability here. This was Diana's, I think, really good idea to put this before the Planning Commission as an FYI, like staff gets an FYI. We're happy to answer any questions we can answer on these laws. We're not experts on these laws yet, of course. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask us. If not, it really is there for your information, kind of what's coming down the pipe, what the state is thinking, where they're leaning.
You used the word applicability. I'd be curious to know relevance, like with the density bonus, relevance to Escalon, applicability of the AB 1325, and then maybe an explanation for the mitigation fee, just a little more elaboration than what's there.
Perfect. So on the density bonus one, AB 323, first one in your packet there. Yeah, density bonus, that is not something that the city does. The second bullet point there is why we pulled this out. The bill also prohibits a developer from selling a unit constructed pursuant to a local inclusionary zoning ordinance, which we do have, that is intended for owner occupancy for persons or families of extremely low, very low, low, or moderate income, to a purchaser that is not a person or family of extremely low income. So the city does have an inclusionary housing ordinance, basically set aside 10 to 15% of any development for low-income housing or pay an in lieu fee, as I recall. And so I just, remark on that one. You can tell where the state is going on these things, right? They definitely want to ensure that the cities are doing everything they can to make these units available. That was that one. Can you remind me of the others?
Well, just the micro enterprises, what exactly is a micro enterprise, and is that something that pertains to us here?
I can speak on that one. So there was the original version of this law, 2019 maybe it came out, that allowed people to operate restaurants from their houses. So you could serve so many meals per day out of your kitchen. You could make so much money per year doing this type of business. That law in 2019 was an opt-in law, so it is not allowed unless your county opted into it, and then the cities within that county would be able to offer this type of business license and this type of business for the residents to start to operate. In 2019, the San Joaquin County Board of Supervisors chose not to opt in, and so while this law is still out there and allowable for locations in California, it is not allowed in San Joaquin County.
Okay.
Nor in Escalon, which we're in the county.
Now, just for clarification, you said restaurants, but to cook in their house to take out, is that the same type of thing as cooking and having somebody eat on site?
Right, so microenterprise allowed you to do both. You could cook and serve in your house, like a sit-down restaurant. You could also cook and sell for people to take and go. That's only allowed under microenterprise, but it's not. Our county did not opt into that.
So if somebody's doing that here in town, okay.
Another element to this, and probably the reason we pulled it, is the state, I think, is moving in this direction as well, trying to make it easier, and I will say it this way, leveling the playing fields on populations that they feel are have a harder time starting businesses, to try to level the playing field for them, make it easier for these populations to start a business, own a business, grow a business. And when I look at, kind of what makes cities click, and maybe even small cities, these sort of the gig economy, right? These micro enterprises could play a bigger role into the future. I don't know. I don't know what this is all going to look like. But we're very ag-based. We have a lot of sort of makers, I would think, in this region. And so I just, these sort of bubble up a little bit to me when, especially when I see where the state is going on these types of bills. And then did you have one more?
I didn't have anything specific on the next two, but then that last one, 516, some clarification maybe.
I think the second paragraph, no direct applicability to us, but again, the state's moving in this direction, just greater transparency in terms of fee processes. It's kind of this balance between cities and their ability to enact fees, and people's understanding of those and really what they're driving, and then the public's view of lack of transparency or not wanting fees. And so, the state's trying to make greater transparency. Of course, anyone would want greater transparency. But there seems to maybe be an undertone, especially when you couple it with, I think there's a proposed legislation more from the taxpayer groups, right? That's every new tax, every new fee has to have a greater percentage of people, if it goes out to the public, approve that fee. So nothing really here for us in particular, just sort of interesting. And then, just looking at greater transparency.
Well, it talks about additional burdens and costs on local agencies.
Yes.
So that's what caught my eye.
Yeah. And there's a couple in here that, will say there's sort of unfunded mandate is what the local jurisdictions use. State will say, hey, you have to do this, but they're unfunded mandates, right? There's an expectation that they're being carried out, but there's not a revenue stream associated with that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'll just talk about the rest. So SB 229, which is the Surplus Land Act 1, I pulled the Surplus Land Act out because we all know city owns a couple of pieces of property. We've gone out to RFP to see if we can get those into active use, to try to generate some revenue for those properties. But we've also had the conversation with a developer about potentially affordable or senior housing on the property sort of north of Hogan there. Surplus Land Act is absolutely a process that we'd have to go through anytime we deem property, in this case surplus. It used to have to go to government agencies first for first right of refusal. Now it goes to housing developers, or especially low-income housing developers first. So it's something that jurisdictions have sort of thought through, right, and struggled with a little bit, what to do with some of these properties. So I just pull that out. I don't think we're going to get a notice of violation or anything like that, and that's what this law speaks to, but just about the SLA in general. And then AB 821. This I do think is one of the more poignant ones, really getting cities to streamline the process. And when I say streamline, I really mean like make it easier, less barbs to get caught on, right? So basically this talks about if a project is consistent with the general plan but not consistent with the underlying zoning, cities used to have to update one of the two documents within a reasonable time frame. But reasonable time frame was very broad. So now the state's starting to say, okay, you're going to do this within 180 days. Or you have to move forward with this project as long as it's consistent with the general plan at least. So it's just really the state trying to push to make sure new development, I would say in general, but specifically residential development is being moved forward as quickly as possible.
So I wrote this because I've been reading a lot about what's been happening in San Francisco, where the number of new housing permits approved averages one per day. 360 permits in a city of 720,000. It occurred to me that this likely was written for cities like San Francisco or other cities that feel that
I would agree. Do I think this is going to hit Escalon tomorrow? Absolutely not. But what you've seen is, the state sort of ratchets up. And, this click here, which is innocuous to us, could be, 4 further clicks in a couple of years, and then it starts to mean something. So just, so you're generally kind of aware. just to add to the San Francisco, I mean, pretty widely known, several articles, not only one permit a day perhaps, which I had not heard, average building permits taking 600 days in San Francisco. So yeah, I think the state is really looking at, you know, those communities who are or are not doing things within their power to slow things down.
Comments on these? We're not doing anything with this, just information. Okay.
Thank you for providing it.
Thank you. Kind of on a tangent, what, as far as general plan, as far as housing elements, as far as, are we in the minority as far as not having our housing element, you know, in the shorter span of time and had to go to the longer, or what does the rest of the state look like as far as?
The state breaks up housing element updates into various groups. So Southern California is like the first group who kind of goes through the process. You know, there's the Central Valley group, there's the Bay Area group, there's the kind of Sacramento region who goes through the process at different intervals, different stages. We are in the Central Valley group. We have and had the same deadline as all the other Central Valley cities. I'm sure some have adopted by the December 31st deadline, but very few from what we heard, like less than a third.
Okay.
So the others, and there are many further behind than us, have not. And up and down the state, many jurisdictions, Bay Area, Southern California, many struggled with the tight timeline. I will just share, it's after the RHNA, so the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, which is what we get the number from, basically you have 18 months to adopt a plan. And that worked relatively well when the state wasn't taking 5-6 months of that 18 months to review, and sometimes more. But now it's minimum 3 months for the first review, minimum 2 months for second review, that's 5 months. And then if there's, you know, additional reviews, it's 60 days or so. So 18 months sounds like a lot of time. At least 5 of it is taken up with review generally. If you do it in one review, which is unheard of, you know, that's only 3 months. So no, I would absolutely not say we're in the minority. I would say a lot of cities struggle, but that's not to say none have not met their statutory deadline.
See, matters presented from the audience. Nobody here? Anybody online? Say anything? Okay. Staff communications.
Yes, thank you. I think probably just one thing, light agenda today, not a light agenda next meeting. We are tracking for having 3 development projects move forward. I'm not saying they will all materialize, of course, but it's looking like 3 development projects will be on the next agenda for March. So very heavy agenda. Hope you all can make it. And I mean, it's good probably to see, you know, development moving forward.
Which ones those might be?
Sure. So Austin Meat Service is on Escalon. It is a butcher/retail sale of meat products. The first development in the Liberty Business Park, it's a steel manufacturing business. And then you have the senior apartment complex behind McDonald's. Those are the 3 projects that are slated right now for the March agenda. They all have their signs up. They're tracking towards the March agenda.
Okay.
Meeting's on the 12th, is that correct?
Sounds right.
Commissioner communications. Started this in, Commissioner Van Dyke.
Nothing from me.
Close.
No, but I did appreciate seeing the assembly bills and whatnot. That's nice to keep abreast, even if it's not 100% applicable to us here, but nice to know what's going on. So thank you for that. And happy Valentine's Day. That's all.
No, I'm good. I already brought up everything that I brought with me.
Any update on the park construction? Is that starting soon?
Likely not to start soon. I think we have heard the community and want to take a step back and kind of look at a couple of different options. Council has pretty directly directed city staff to come back with a couple of different options for the community's consideration. So we are lining things up with BNSF. There's some questions about, approval of the improvements, about effects on sale and all of that. If we can sell, long-term lease versus short-term lease. So we're working with BNSF. We are also kind of going back, I don't want to say back to the drawing board, but just re-looking at the plan itself, the amenities within the plan, where those amenities are located, and we'll bring forward options for the community's consideration at workshops like we held, I'm sure, and then as we hopefully coalesce around agreed upon option, plan, then we'll bring that forward to the city council, approve the plan, then we'll go back out to bid. We'll line up to make sure that all the improvements are eligible under the grant that we received with the awarding body, SJCOG.
I'm glad to hear that. I heard several people discontented with how quickly things were moving and then what some of the improvements were going to be that were not to their liking. So I'm glad to hear that we've slowed down and taken all the views into consideration.
That's all for me. Okay, with that, it is 7 o'clock and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Okay.